Steam and Sorcery, a transdimensional adventure starring Phineas, Frakture, and Sir Vlishginath, the Cleansing Light. Episode 11, written by Joseph Gatch and Daniel Mitchell. Read by Fentriss O. Moore. Guards ran in every which direction. Church knights hustled in columns through the city streets. There was a distinct sense of sheer panic and chaos in the air, and the townfolks knew it, but for what reason, none could say. Women gathered up their children and pulled them inside, shuttering their windows and barring their doors. It was there, in the midst of all the apparent chaos, that the shimmering surface of the portal appeared, like a speck in midair that expanded until it was as wide as the streets of Ascension themselves and twice again as high. Then they came, pouring through the portal, snarling and baring their vicious tusks. The orc army that Orlocks had managed to cow into service were heralded by the hammering sound of their orcish war drums, the pounding thrum resonating through the streets and echoing off of buildings, heightening the chaotic frenzy tenfold. Yet in the center of it all, one figure stood stoic amidst the turmoil, Sir Vlishginath, shouting his loudest only to be scarcely heard above the thunderous noise of the orcish drummers, pointed the tip of retribution towards the portal as he gave his commands. "Form up! Do not allow them to gain a foothold! Shield wall formation! Let's drive them back from whence they came!" Even as he spoke, the church knights rallied to his call, a wall of shields and plate armored with the church's finest steel forming in front of him on command. Mixed in with the orcs were a smattering of random dread knights that had been given command, cursing and spurring the enormous orcs towards the wall of church knights in an inevitable clash. It was at that moment, however, that another appeared through the portal. Professor Frakture, followed closely by Orlocks the Life Witherer, as the two of them came in behind their army just in time to see the orcs collide with the church knights' shields. Standing amongst the sea of orcs pouring in around them, Orlocks grinned wickedly, leaning over to speak to Phineas. "Excellent work on the portal, Professor. Now we make our way to the church. While the church knights are preoccupied, we can plant your explosive and make our escape." "Piece of cake," Phineas replied, clutching the spell tome under his left arm. It was just as he began to chant that the voice of Vlishginath was heard, crying out in a rage, "Frakture!" Looking up, Phineas smiled smugly as the cleansing light began fighting his way through the onslaught of orcs, ducking and weaving through the oncoming bodies in a graceful sword dance that slew an orc each time retribution lashed out. Scowling, Orlocks instinctively tried to clench his non-existent left hand. "I'll deal with him. You make your way towards the church," Phineas said calmly, muttering a few arcane words and lifting up into the air above the crowd. Shooting one final glare in Vlishginath's direction, Orlocks disappeared, clutching Phineas's bomb to his chest. Cutting down an orc with a powerful diagonal downward stroke, a sudden blast of arcane fire at his feet knocked Vlishginath backwards, the church knight landing on his back and nearly having the wind knocked out of him. Looking up into the air, he watched as Phineas came to hover directly over him. The airborne professor lazily pointed a single finger at Vlishginath and grinned with a sense of satisfaction. "You know, I have to admit, Arthur, you were right all along. I find wizardry much to my liking, after all." That said, a thin red line shot from the tip of Phineas's finger. Vlishginath reacted just in time to bring his shield up in front of him. Where it touched the shield, it burned white hot, yet the golden dragon scale proved too durable even for the disintegrating line, and soon Phineas grew frustrated when all he could achieve was a burnt-looking black spot. The moment he stopped, Vlishginath immediately rolled onto his stomach, pushing himself up off the ground and taking a defensive stance with his shield in front of him. "Frakture, come to your senses. This isn't the kind of person you are. Think about what you are doing." "Oh, I am," Phineas shot back, and with a wave of his hand, a massive plume of flame erupted from thin air, streaking directly towards Vlishginath. Kneeling down, Vlishginath took cover behind his shield. Phineas snarled in frustration. "Blast it, Arthur! Stop fighting fair!" "Frakture, listen to me. What you are doing is wrong. You know this to be true. Do not force me to fight you." Scoffing, Phineas cracked his knuckles. "Fight me? And how are you going to do that from down there?" "I know." With a sudden lifting motion, Phineas brought the very ground that Vlishginath stood on upwards in a series of pointed spikes. Diving to the side, Vlishginath landed on his right pauldron, tucking his head in and continuing on with the momentum in a roll, landing in a one-kneed kneel before standing once again. Utilizing both hands, Phineas proceeded to lob explosive spheres of blue flame, crackling with arcane energy at him in rapid succession, each one hitting the ground and igniting in a 3-foot sphere of flame that did not discriminate against who it engulfed. Taking off in a surprisingly fast run, considering the armor he wore, Vlishginath resumed weaving through orcs as Phineas chased after him, calling down balls of electrical blue fire from the sky. When it became apparent that Vlishginath would not tire, Phineas let out a frustrated howl. "Enough! This has been fun, but if you'll excuse me, I have a reward to earn. I've arranged for something to keep you occupied in the meantime. Let me introduce you to my little friend." A loud hiss filled the air, followed by the sound of churning gears and a rhythmic clockwork clicking sound as an enormous mechanical automaton in the shape of a troll lumbered through the portal. Its enormous arms ended in a pair of solid metal warhammers, the vicious fangs in its powerful hydraulic jaws made from sharpened steel. With another loud hiss, it let out a large gasp of steam from several of its joints, then banged its warhammer hands together in anticipation of the upcoming fight. His eyes going wide, Vlishginath watched as Phineas took off, soaring overhead towards the church. Another loud burst of steam from the mechanical troll brought his attention back, however, as the thing began taking heavy, purposeful steps towards him. But just as Vlishginath was about to raise his shield, a giant-sized hand touched his shoulder, pulling him back and pushing him aside at the same time. Stepping forward to greet the mechanical monstrosity, Maximus lifted his hands and cracked his knuckles against the palm of his hands, speaking in his deep, graveled voice. "You go deal with the little guy. I'll handle junk pile here." Nodding, Vlishginath turned, racing towards the church as fast as he could, slipped through the multitude of orcs engaged in combat with guards and church knights alike. Clanging its warhammer hands together again, the mechanical troll leveled its glowing red eyes on Maximus, quickening its pace as it moved towards him. "Well, let's see what you've got then," Maximus said as if in response. And at that, the two charged each other, Maximus wrapping his colossal arms around the mechanical troll's waist and lifting Frakture's monstrous creation off the ground. Frantically, the clockwork creature pounded at him with its warhammers. Maximus grunted with each impact, maintaining his grapple and slamming the troll headfirst into the ground with a pivoting sideways pile drive that left a sizable dent in the construct's cranial chassis. Reaching back, Maximus grasped the handle of judgment as the troll pushed itself up off the ground, righting itself and performing a brief check of its systems to ensure a full range of movement. The monstrosity rounded on the half-giant once more, and the two squared off to continue. Phineas entered the church. Bodies were strewn everywhere. Men, women, children. He flinched, seeing the carnage that he had traversed. When Orlok stated that he was striking at the heart of the church, Phineas didn't realize that meant the heart of the city where he'd first arrived. Orlok's beef was clearly not just with the church, or he didn't realize the destructive capabilities of the bomb. Phineas followed the trail of bodies to the main cathedral, where he found Orlok standing in front of the altar, his stumped arm resting on the bomb, while in his good hand he held the unconscious form of an elderly cleric. "What are you doing?" Phineas' voice echoed throughout the chamber. "The same thing you would do," laughed Orlok. "Isn't it wonderful? I finally have my revenge. They will all perish, and the dawning of the age of Necros will be upon us, and it is all thanks to you." With a glint of madness in his eyes, he tossed the limp priest to the side and flipped a switch on the Malandi bomb. The device began chirping, slowly at first, and then picking up speed. With a flourish of his red cape, Orlok smiled. "Now, I will bid you goodbye, Professor Frakture." Phineas's eyes widened. "We had a deal," he shouted. "Yes, we did. And soon you shall join your dead friends in the Hall of the Dead God." Orlok looked at the bomb and then back at Phineas. "Soon, I should think." "You bastard!" Phineas conjured up a ball of blue flame in his hands and whipped it at Orlok, but Regulac appeared in its path, dispersing it with his hand before conjuring up his own and returning fire upon the professor. Phineas dove behind a pew to avoid the explosion and resurfaced just in time to see the pair leave through one of their magic portals. Racing up to the bomb, Phineas began the disarming sequence. Expecting a total shutdown, it surprised him to find that it refused all commands. How the hell did he do this? He was about to pull open the casing when the familiar ring of retribution was heard approaching swiftly. Shaking his head, Phineas gritted his teeth. "Now is not the time, Arthur." "It is exactly the time," Vlishginath replied, leading with his right foot and putting all of his weight behind a vicious shield bash that slammed into Phineas and sent him sprawling to the ground. "And you will address me as Sir Vlishginath." With his last word, Vlishginath advanced on the professor, chasing after him with a series of slashes, thrusts, and swings from his shield that had Phineas backpedaling and struggling to form the somatic components of his spells. As Vlishginath continued to press his assault with relentless fury, when Phineas's back met with unyielding stone, the cleansing light stepped in, pinning the professor to the wall with his golden scale shield and poising retribution above his head with the point aimed between Phineas's eyes. "Do you realize how many innocent lives will be lost because of you?" Vlishginath shouted, his temper flaring. His eyes narrowed. Phineas grunted and was unsuccessfully fumbling with the pouch that contained his Tesla rod when suddenly there came a blinding white light that enveloped them both. When they could see once more, they were standing not in the church, but in a realm of pure white light, nothing around them, and nothing above nor below them. Looking all around, Vlishginath frowned, glancing back at Phineas with a distrustful glare. "Enough of your arcane trickery, Frakture." "This wasn't me," Phineas shot back, pushing against Vlishginath's shield with what force he could muster, but still unable to move the stoic church knight. "No, it was I," came a sudden voice from seemingly nowhere. It was then that the elderly-looking man approached, clad in a simple blue and white tunic that hung past his knees, with dark blue leggings, brown leather boots, and a long sword belted at his waist. A gray-haired man, with a stern visage and judgmental gaze, approached the two openly, as a father would when separating his quarreling sons. Immediately, Vlishginath removed his helmet, falling prostrate on both knees and bowing his head reverently. Quirking a confused eyebrow, Phineas was taken aback when he glanced towards the old man, only to find him standing so close that they could almost touch noses. "You know not who I am, do you, Phineas J. Frakture, professor, scientist, and a man becoming an increasing nuisance in a realm you do not belong in?" Smirking, Phineas rolled his eyes. "Oh, how wonderful. Another lunatic with a god complex." "Mind your tongue, Frakture," Vlishginath shouted, turning his head to face Phineas, but not daring to raise it. "You address the All-Father." Sighing, Mythos frowned at Vlishginath. "Do stand up, Gar. How many times must we go through this? You've saved the entire realm from the brink of utter oblivion countless times. I think you, of all people, have earned the right to remain standing." "As you command, All-Father." "Stop that. You, on the other hand," and as he spoke, Mythos turned his attention back to Phineas, who had a wholly unimpressed expression on his face. "So I'm supposed to simply believe that you are a god, is that right? Just because you know my name and what I do hardly makes you a god. The only thing it proves is that—" But then, Phineas was cut off as Mythos reached forward, gently pressing the tip of his right index finger against the professor's head. In that instant, for the briefest of moments, Phineas's mind touched upon the knowledge of creation, divinity, and the infinite expanse of the universe itself. And in that second, he knew the man who stood before him to be who, and more importantly, what he claimed to be. Brace him, Mythos said calmly. Vlishginath rushed over to catch hold of the professor as he nearly crumpled to the ground, his legs failing him and his body going limp against his will. Now then, Mythos continued in an irritated tone, you've caused quite a disturbance since you've arrived, and while normally I make a point not to interfere with the natural order of things, your appearance and the problems you've brought with you are far from what I would call normal, and I would prefer not to see the entire city of Ascension and the surrounding countryside obliterated because of what has proven to be a ridiculous series of events that never should have occurred in the first place. Gar, stop averting your eyes. As you command, All-Father. Good. Now, here's what's going to happen. Once I return the two of you, Gar, you are to aid the professor in any way he requires to ensure that the seemingly imminent destruction he has brought on does not come to pass. It's a bomb, Phineas corrected, trying his best to claim the intellectual high ground but still too lightheaded to stand on his own. You think I don't know that? Mythos shot back. At any rate, I want your solemn vows that you'll quit wasting time with this ridiculous squabble until the city is safe. Am I understood? Yes, All-Father. Sure thing, Santa Claus. Frowning irritably, Mythos sighed, and with a dismissive wave of his hand, the two of them found themselves back in the cathedral. What the hell was that? Phineas demanded, nearly falling to the floor. That was called divine intervention, Vlishginath replied. I feel weird, calm, peaceful. His mind was suddenly shaken by the remindful chirping of the Malandi bomb. And we're going to blow up any second. Phineas rushed over to the bomb. Orlox did something to it. I can't stop the countdown. Then how do we stop it? Vlishginath asked. Can we cover it up? Giving him a condescending look, Phineas just shook his head, remembering who he was talking to. No, I have to get it out of here. How do I get to the top of the tower? This way. Vlishginath led Phineas through an archway, off to the side into a staircase that led upwards to the bell tower. The two raced up and around, all the while the bomb chirped faster and faster, goading them on. Finally, they broke through to the top and out to the balcony. Now what? Are we safe? Not by a long shot. How did that go? Crap, I can't remember the spell. Up. Windguard levitation. Shazam. Crap. I'll do it the easy way. Cross your fingers. Phineas activated his kicker jets, sending a spray of steam around him and rocketing himself upwards towards the overcast sky as Vlishginath looked helplessly on.